So as far back as we can trace on my mom's side,
Yeah.
to Ukraine.
Yeah.
My dad's side was sort of like a little bit more scattered, like going further back. On my mom's side, my mother's mother, her parents were first generation immigrant.
Were they escaping anything?
Yiddish speaking, sort of like pogrom kind of lifestyle.
I didn't know pogroms was a lifestyle.
The pogromists. Both my parents were born in New York. My dad's side of the family moved to LA, and then his whole family sort of transplanted into rural Oregon. They were sort of like in black Jewish Los Angeles. And so he was like this LA Jew boy, plopped down in like rural Oregon high school. He says that when he moved to Philomath, Oregon, he was like the only Jew. Him and his sister were the only Jews in the high school. And so like he became much more conscious of it and had to sort of like figure out what that meant.
Growing up in Eugene, do you feel like you looked like the other Jews, or you looked like other people, or you didn't look like anybody?
I don't know how much I thought about it. I think like the way that I looked, I didn't really like read into it Jewishness for a really long time. I think only when I was 15 and like I had a big growth spurt and my like features started changing and I like developed a real Jewish schnoz. I was like, oh, that's what it is.
Like when you were little, you just looked like.
I had like a button nose and it's cute.
Right.
Sort of dark.
Yeah.
Sort of like was noticed for like having dark features. Certainly, sort of like that sense of ambiguity, or like sort of like flexibility in terms of like who I was, or like how I could be identified just visually. Since like 9/11, and I had like a really big beard, or just like a full dark beard, people were like, oh, you probably get a lot of shit, you probably get really harassed. Like sort of like hearing people talk about that, of sort of like having a Semitic look with a beard, and sort of like, oh, yeah, people read into that. I certainly feel like I experience white privilege. Sort of like I don't get tagged as other in a real rapid way. But I also feel like sometimes non-white people have like more, or sort of like, well, there's sort of like more of a question about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's in certain ways true for me, of sort of like feeling like, sort of like conceptualizing my Judaism and Jewishness as like Jewishness, I guess, not Judaism, but sort of like just envisioning it and thinking about it in terms of race, which I've only really done recently, the last few years. I think of race as culturally constructed, and I don't think about my own sort of like race in terms of like where my ancestors originated and their sort of like genetic line. So yes, like back to the Middle East. I mean, I just feel like I have a lot of freedom to play around with it. And like people ask and they really have no idea. It's a range, but sort of like that tippy toe kind of questioning was like, I don't want to offend you, but like I really can't tell who you are.
Yeah.
Or like, I think I do know who you are.
Yeah.
Maybe you could give me a clue.
Yeah. When people think they know who you are, do people often guess Jewish? Is that kind of what they're thinking? Or?
It's not a surprise for people. My Jewishness really plays into my sense of humor and my mannerisms and what feels like a good interaction or feels like attractive in a friendship. I don't interact as fluidly or comfortably, or am not attracted to certain kinds of people, or am to other kinds of people. And I definitely like gravitate towards Jews, and like there's a certain comfort in that. And I also can be like really repulsed by like overly, what I see as like overly Jewish or like too stereotypical.
How does that connection feel to you with converts?
I think I have like something skeptical that sort of like I filter. Like, what are you trying to prove?
Uh-huh. Do you think of all Jews on any level sharing a historical or ancestral tie to Israel?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the tie, sharing a history as a people in whatever way that gets defined.